Hello everybody, my name is Paul McKeever, and this is my new guitar build. All right, long time no see. Sorry, I've been busy with a lot of things, but I want to continue on now with a very important step in setting up the bridge. So the parts on this particular bridge, the saddles, there are 6 saddles, one for each string, and they're individually adjustable not only in terms of how far forward and back they go for intonation purposes, but also in terms of height. And so the question is, well, all right, what is the proper height to set a saddle? And you might say, well, just high enough so it doesn't buzz or something like that. And I mean, I suppose that's one way to do it. But there is a more uniform way of setting those saddle heights. And that is by following the curve of the neck. So how do you do this? Well, imagine that you have, this is a radius we're talking about. The radius is the curvature of the fingerboard. So how do you find that curvature and relate it back to the strings at the point of the saddles? Well, first of all, let's just talk about radius for a second. The radius is the curvature of the neck at the fingerboard across from the E string through to the other E string. That's the curvature I'm talking about. And in some guitars, it's a 10-inch radius, and others it might be a 16-inch radius, so more curvy or more flat. The thinking is usually you want it more flat if you're pulling the strings a lot, because just the way the strings move when they're being pulled, if the radius is too tight, when you pull the string, it will fret out. It will buzz on the fret as you're getting closer. So people who do a lot of pulling of the string, not everybody does, but people who do want to make sure that the radius is flat enough that they're not choking out the string. Now, when I chose my neck, I chose a compound radius. So down at the end of the guitar that has the nut, that radius is actually a 10-inch radius. And at the end that has the last fret, that's a 16-inch radius. So it gets from curvy through to flatter as you go from the nut toward the bridge. That way it's comfortable near the nut for strumming chords and that kind of thing. That's why you want the curvature. It follows the curve of the hand, And then when you get to the other end, when you get up to the higher frets, you want it nice and flat, because that's where most of your solo work's going to be done, most of your string bending and that kind of thing. So now what is this radius? In case you don't know, the radius is, if you were to take a circle, then half the distance from the center to the edge of the circle, to the circumference of the circle, that's the radius. And so when we say 10-inch radius, we mean imagine that you had a hoop or a circle and that you slid it over your neck, okay? So the neck goes this way. Imagine you had a hoop that went this way around it. And imagine that you had a 20-inch diameter hoop. That would mean a 10-inch radius, okay? 10-inch radius. And if you were to lay that radius, that hoop, on the fingerboard at the place on my fingerboard, for example, where it's 10-inch radius, then the hoop would lie right on the wood, nice and flatly. If it were a 16-inch radius, then you'd have a circle that's a 32-inch diameter, and you put that circle, slide that circle on the neck, and bring it up to, say, the 22nd fret on my guitar, where it's a 16-inch radius, and that hoop would lie flatly on the fingerboard. So now we want to have the strings take on that same curvature. In my case, the 16-inch curvature. How do you do that at the level of the nut? Well, there are tools that you can purchase. I purchased mine from stumac.com, and I'm just going to show those to you now. And so we can unbox this a little bit and just show you. These are the tools I purchased. We have a number of these things, and this is where we're going to go first. These are the things that will allow you to both measure the curvature of the neck and then translate that curvature to the strings at the point of the bridge. So let's just see. I'm going to take out a 16-inch. These come in all different sizes. You'll see they come in different sizes. All right, but they're each a little bit different curvature. And I'm going to take out the one that's the 16-inch, and it should lay right on top of the fingerboard at the, let's say, 22nd fret of my guitar. So let's have a look. All right, so here it is, sitting right on top of the fingerboard. And we don't have any gap underneath there. It sits nice and flatly on the wood. So we know that, yes, just like I ordered, this is a 16 inch radius at this end. All right, so we've got the 10-inch radius, okay? And we're going to put it in at this end. And again, we want to slide it under the strings because the strings in this case are really close to the fret. All right, let's have a look. Yes, that's sitting nicely. I'm going to show you. And there we go. So you can see there's no light underneath that. That's sitting nicely right on the wood. And that's a 10-inch. So the compound radius, 10-inch on this end, 16-inch down here. Oop, our piece fell over, but 16-inch on that end, okay? So now what we need to do is go to this part and make sure that these strings are on an arc that matches that there, 16-inch. Now if we pull this underneath, we should be able to see if all the strings are touching, you see, because the top of this device, this thing here, has the same, so the top of the arc, it has the same arc as the bottom of the arc. There we can see that the D string is riding high, the A string is riding high, the G string is, you can see a bit of a shadow there, so that's riding high. The B string seems to be just a little high. And then the E string, well no, I guess, you know what? The B string's a little low, it's touching, and I have to wiggle to get the bar to touch the E. So what we're going to do then is start by setting the heights that we want for the low E and the high E. The rest of the strings, the saddles for the strings, we're going to put higher, okay? Too high, so that we can then set properly just the two E's. Once we have those two set in a position we like, we can then make the arc between the two E strings using that device, just adjusting the saddles up or down for each of the strings. All right, so we'll start with that, the two E strings, and go from there. And you'll recall, if you've been watching this series, that the piece that, or the bridge that I'm using, the Vega Trem, it allows, you know, it allows the bridge to be locked in position, so you have to unlock it with an Allen wrench, and then you can adjust the heights, and you can adjust the forward and backward, the intonation. So that's what we're going to have to do first. I'll just show you where those are. Just as a reminder, these are the locks right here. So we'll have to turn those counterclockwise to loosen them. These little tiny screws are the height adjusters. They have two, so one on either side of the string, so you bring them up and make sure the saddle is flat. We'll loosen all these, and then we'll set the heights of these two. And then using that 16-inch tool, we're going to set the adjust the other four that are in between the two E's. So the A, the D, the G, and the B. And that should give us a curve at the bridge that matches the curve down here at the end of the neck, okay? Before we adjust those saddles, there's one thing we should probably do, and that's to make sure that the neck is nice and flat, okay? Because we're starting, remember, by adjusting the low E and the high E, and that, you know, will be done partly by determined partly by, you know, is the string buzzing and that kind of thing. So if this neck is nice and flat before we determine what height we want the two E's to be, then we'll have our best chance of having a low action without buzzing. What if the neck is, you know, is warped like this or warped the other way? This is called an up bow, and that would be, I guess, a down bow. So let's have a look. And the way you can do that is by laying a high precision ruler along the neck. You can do it on top of the frets. Let me just show you a couple of different things that StewMac offers. There are two devices that StewMac offers for, you know, determining whether your neck is nice and straight. I'm going to use this one here, which will lie on top of the frets. This one is designed, I believe, to, you know, rest on the wood between the frets, and that's why you have these gaps. So this has 21 gaps, if you will. On this side, it's short scale guitar. So that would be, I think, a Les Paul is what they're trying to get at, that kind of scale. And then long scale guitar, that would be the longer necks that you find on Fenders. So let's use that one. So we step, it doesn't, for whatever reason, it doesn't start with the first fret. If you do that, if you move this way, you end up with the teeth not lining up properly. But if you start at the second fret, just behind the second fret, you'll see that the teeth line up nicely with the frets between. So if I have a look at this, if I just let that sit, I can look at the fingerboard and see if I've got any gap between the metal of the device and the wood. There's a small gap right there. You can see a little bit of white, a little bit of gap. So we do have some up bow. Now the other way we can do this is, instead of using the ruler that has the gaps between the frets, we can lay a ruler, and this is the other StewMac product, just lay the ruler right on top of the frets. And it's a wide enough ruler that it can stand by itself. All right, so it can be very difficult to see this, but I think if you put a lamp behind, as I have here, I'm not seeing the lamp. So, I mean, I know the ruler's hitting that fret there. It's on the very end. And again, we're going to compare that to the middle. You see that? Let's see if we can get a better focus. I'm clearly getting light shining on the fret where I shouldn't see it, because the ruler should be touching. We can see here on the other end where the ruler definitely is touching the last fret. There's no shine of the light, which is right behind it, underneath the ruler. So this is telling me that we do have a bit of an up bow. So you can see right here, this is the truss rod adjuster. This makes it handy. You don't have to take the neck off, because you'll recall on many Fender style necks, there's no, truss rod adjustment up here. So you would have to get under this end to adjust it by taking the neck off first. But with Warmoth, you can get this, or you normally do get this side adjust. So you don't need to take the neck off, and it would be a clockwise turn. If you want to take the neck's, up bow and flatten it a bit so that it's just across and not bowed like a U. So we're going to give this, I think, about a quarter turn. Let's see where that leaves us. That didn't do it. We're still a bit bowed, so I'm going to give it another quarter turn. You should now be able to see, I think you'll see, that we've pretty much got the ruler kissing all of the frets. You see how the white light doesn't reflect underneath anymore. And it's still at the ends, touching at the ends, so I haven't created a bow the other way. So now we're ready to adjust the saddles. All right, so we're going to start by unlocking the saddles. Can be a little tricky. And you want to unlock them a fair bit, because when you start pulling the saddles up, they'll start to bind on the lock nut. So you want to make sure that they don't bind. You want to give yourself that freedom of movement. And then we're going to set these two strings up first. It's hard to do this when you have it on a bench, but because you have to simulate how hard you pick the string. Obviously, if you pick the string more aggressively, it's going to get more buzz, but I think again, it depends how hard you depress the string. going to raise that just a bit. I'm not too happy with the buzzing I am hearing. And so I'm going to adjust these two pieces here by turning them clockwise. I'm going to raise the string. Sorry. Yes, clockwise. I'll give it one turn on each side and see where we're at. I'm going to leave it right about there. It's a good compromise. And now we'll go to the E string on the other end and see where we're at on that. Oh, well, we're touching down. So we've got to raise that one for certain. Much better, okay. That's fretting out closer to the nut. I'm going to raise this a bit more. Hopefully we'll clear that. Another way of doing this might be to raise the nut a little bit. That might be the better way. We'll have to see how high I have to adjust the action in order to make this work better. That's fine. That's fine at the A. Sorry, at the B. That's fine at the G. Okay. So we've got our E's adjusted in a way I think I'm happy with. And so I'm going to lock them in place. Not tuned, but nice and clear sounding. So now we're going to get the 16-inch arc out and place it, go between the G and the D, and then we can have a look and see where we're at. Now, if I just lift it up right there, you'll notice I'm not even touching the E. Like I'd have to do that to make it touch the high E. So there I think you can see that, for example, the G string is low, the D string is low, the A string is low. So these four middle strings need to be raised and then gradually, lifted up first and then gradually lowered to the point where they'll touch the arc. All right, so we're going to raise these four up. One, two, three. I'm going to go 3 turns. 1, 2, 3. And I'm starting to feel a bit of binding. In other words, it's getting harder to turn, and that tells me that the lock nut's still a bit too locked, so I'm going to loosen that off. Yeah, I can feel it. 2, 3. I'm just doing this by eye. I'm trying to make sure that they are higher than the E's on both ends. Also, I'm trying to make sure that the saddles are flat this way. I don't want them tilted one way or the other. I want them flat. So let's try now and have a look to see whether all of the 4 middle strings are higher. Yes, they are. Good. Than the 2 E's. So I'm holding this up. The 2 E's are touching the top of this device, okay? And the B, the G, the D, and the A are all higher. And so I'm just going to lower them now, one at a time, until they touch, till they kiss the top of this device. I'm going to assume that one turn at a time is a safe bet. Let's have a look. Still a bit high for the A. That's looking pretty good. That's touching now. So this A string, well, I suppose, because it's buzzing, that's another good test. I would think that it's making contact, whereas you see that one, the D string, is higher than this device, so it's ringing. The A is not. Okay, we're on our way. So let's try now lowering the D. I'm going to do that the same way, one turn at a time. To my eye, that's starting to make contact, but let's just see. Not quite yet. Let's just lower it a little bit more. I'm going to go half a turn for the D. On both sides of it. Let's see where we're at now with the buzzing test. So what that tells me is, see how the A is kind of ringing now a little bit? Whereas the D and the E are not. I've lowered the D too much. So I'm going to do a quarter turn higher instead of lower. And see where we're at. I'm thinking I should just be maybe an eighth of a turn higher. Let's see where we're at now. Just a bit too high. Okay. Wow, that's finicky. Okay, I like that. Let's go to the G next. I'm going to go a full turn. I can see that it, just by eyeballing it, I can see the G is still too high. So I'm going to go another, I'll go a half turn, see where we're at. I think I've lowered it too much, so I'm going to raise it a quarter. Still a bit low, so I'm going to raise it a little bit more. You know what I'm seeing here is that the A needs to go up just a bit. I guess because this is a floating bridge, that might also have an impact on things, so. Now the D needs to come down a bit. I'm just going to do an eighth turn. That D I think those five are all good now. So we just have to do the B and we're done. We'll lock it all up. Let's start by doing one turn lower. Seems to be a good approach. And it looks to my eye that it's touching. Let's just, I can literally feel it. G looks like it now needs to go down a bit. That's it. Just fix the G a little bit and I think we're good. They're all buzzing. That's good. All right, I think we've set the heights. We'll just lock the nuts. Well, I guess they're actually screws. So I'm going to show you what I was seeing that you wouldn't necessarily see from the top. We put the device in like this, and you can see, remember you're trying to keep the two E's touching. And when you do that, you can see that now the G's looking a little bit high. Can you see that? A little bit of light underneath the G. I'm just going to lower that a bit. But other than that, you can see all of the other 5 strings are just kissing the, where are they? You know what might be happening is that B might be a bit low. Because if you look at the 2 E's, well, yeah, I think the B is just a bit low. So I'm just going to raise it a bit. A lot of little adjustments. All right, so now they're all touching the top of that arc. I'm not seeing much in the way of gap. Anyway, there we go. We've adjusted the arc of the neck to make sure it's nice and flat, that the ruler lies on top of all the frets, and then we've gone and we've adjusted the saddles so that the strings follow the arc that's found here at the end of the neck, the 16-inch radius. All that really remains is to adjust the intonation